John Lagada said, proceed. So what I would like to do is when he gets in, he will start the program officially, but unofficially, I request Dr. Bellamkonda Kishore, who is the editor-in-chief of JAPI, Journal of the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, to start the program. So, Dr. Bellamkonda, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, and thank you all. Good evening, and thank you for joining this event on this day. I would like to express my deep gratitude to Dr. Susan Bailey, President of the American Medical Association, for kindly accepting our invitation and launching the Journal of OPI. This is a historical milestone in the annals of OPI. The foundation for this milestone was laid 1 year ago in February 2020 by our visionary leaders, Dr. Sudhakar Jonalageda and Dr. Suresh Reddy. Let me tell you one thing, launching a peer-reviewed journal from scratch is not an easy task. A peer-reviewed journal is a periodical which needs group synergy and cultivation of the culture of peer review process and publication. It is like agriculture, crop after crop. But the very fact that we were able to assemble a passionate and diligent team of editorial board members and develop the required group synergy and culture, bringing out the journal as planned, itself is a sign that OPI has reached a level of academic maturity, capability, and perfection. These in turn should sustain the journal and take it to new heights over time. My thanks are due to the entire team of the editorial board who have demonstrated that we can do it, and Dr. Sudhakar Jonalageda and Dr. Suresh Reddy for the confidence they bestowed on us and for their unconditional support. I would like to thank Ms. Vijaya Kodali, Director of Operations of OPI, for excellent and efficient administrative support. Coming to the journal itself, thanks to the excellent contributions by eminent physicians and scientists like Dr. Elkin, the President of the American Heart Association, the inaugural issue has come out beyond our expectations and in an outstanding manner. We thank all the contributors and particularly the eminent ones who blew life into our journal. We are committed to maintain the same standards in the future. Excellence and thoroughness are our motto. After 1 year of publication, JAPI will be registered with Medline so that it will be indexed in PubMed and other databases. JAPI is a fully open access journal with no manuscript submission and publication charges. And we welcome articles by authors from all over the world without any restrictions. We are also open to eminent academicians wishing to join the editorial board. Details are provided in the journal. Finally, JAPI follows the next generation peer review model by which it discloses the identity of the editors and reviewers after publication. But the peer review process itself is blind. This will give due credit to the editors and the reviewers and also ensures fair review process. There is absolutely no reason why reviewers should remain anonymous after a paper is published. As you can see, the cover page is designed to reflect the heart of OPI, an association of the Indian American physicians, with colors of the flag of India on our motherland on the top, and the red and white stripes of American flag over which the OPI emblem rests, indicating the way we adopted this great land. Thank you all, and God bless America.
Thank you,
Dr. Jonalageda. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. And I'm Dr. Sudhakar Jonalageda, President of American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. I welcome you all to an exciting evening of OPI, celebrator of event of the inauguration of Journal of OPI, JAPI, Journal of AAPI. This is truly a historic event for all OPI physicians, as a dream and vision for a high-quality peer-reviewed scientific journal are coming to reality today. OPI, as a robust contributor to the mainstream of US organized medicine and excellence in healthcare since inception in 1982. It is proud to reach this milestone of academic accomplishment during 2021. It took several months of hard work and planning for this premier initiative coming for the fruition. Thanks to the dedicated teamwork guided by the JAPI Committee Chair, Editor-in-Chief of JAPI, Dr. Kishore Belankonda. We are deeply honored to have our dynamic leader of U.S. Organized Medicine and President of American Medical Association, Dr. Susan R. Bailey. Among us today, the chief guest to inaugurate the journal. We welcome you and thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. We look forward to your CME presentation addressing the challenges faced by the medical community during COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for joining today. At this time, I request our chair of the BOT, Dr. Sajini Shah, say a few words. Dr. Sajini.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bailey, I am so excited to see you tonight as a second generation physician, the president of the AMA, and a fellow woman. We all look up to you and all the great work that you have done and really applaud you for joining us today. We are really excited as the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin today to highlight and congratulate our first scientific journal. As you know, there are many journals out there, and the hard work of this dedicated team to really look at fantastic editors with Dr. Kishore and his team to put together this wonderful journal that will publish sound and scientific literature that will help not only other fellow physicians in the United States, in India, and definitely globally. We really are excited, and as many of you and as I am very excited to have the first scientific journal that API, a national organization full of promising Indian physicians, despite what's going on in our motherland, we have come together and put this wonderful journal together. So again, thank you so much for everybody that's been part of this team to bring this as really a monumental timeline moment for us, especially the second generation physicians. And I can't say that enough because we read so many journals, and it'd be great to read a journal where our fellow colleagues, our mentors, our friends, our family members are part of. So again, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Bailey, so much. I look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. And I request now Dr. Anupama Gautamukula, incoming president, say a few words, please.
Good evening, all, and I'm Dr. Anupama Gautamukula. I'm a pediatric anesthesiologist from San Antonio, Texas, and I welcome Dr. Susan Bailey for being with us today and enjoy the process, what we have done, and this is our teamwork, and great team has put so much effort into bringing this journal, and definitely there is a lot of scope to improve on this, and it's a very good opportunity for young students and fellows and young physicians and many academic physicians to look into this and then improvise it. And this is our first one, so we're looking forward for a great endeavors from this team. I congratulate this team and who worked all around the year, and we are looking forward for the inauguration of this journal and looking forward for your inaugural speech as well. Thank you so much, my co-Texan.
Thank you, Anupama. Thank you very much. At this time, I request Dr. Bailey to inaugurate our JAPI. And I want her to request to hold the journal virtually like this. Thank you.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to join you here to celebrate the launch of your new academic journal. I so wish we had the opportunity to be in person, but until that day arrives, I'm grateful for the technology that allows us to meet virtually. On behalf of everyone at the American Medical Association, we congratulate API on its service to its members, to medicine, and of course, to the launch of your new peer-reviewed scientific journal. I know this journal will soon become an invaluable and trusted source for medical knowledge and health information for practicing and academic physicians, residents, interns, medical students, and many others. We applaud you, and I very much look forward to reading it in the months and years ahead. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. Thank you. And Show all this. At this time, I want to thank you, the AMA delegates from Georgia, and I request them to attend. I think I want to thank my good friend, Dr. Bill Clark. He also attended today. And thank you all. And at this time, I'll request Dr. Murthy, Vemur Murthy, the Dynamic CME Program Chair, to start the CME program. Welcome, Dr. Murthy.
Thank you, Dr. John Lagada. Good evening. Welcome to today's CME program, Physician Leadership in Times of Crisis and Transition. Today's presentation is special for us from the perspectives of the distinguished speaker presenting the topic and the topic itself. COVID-19 pandemic upended global health and disrupted the lives, families, and practices of the physician community globally. The presentation will address the challenges we face as physicians during the current pandemic. By the end of the presentation, we will be able to understand the scope of the American Medical Association's activities in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, know the resources available to physicians through the AMA websites about COVID-19, and comprehend the long-term effects on physicians and patients as well. The Chicago Medical Society accredits today's presentation for the 1-hour CME Category 1 award. Please submit the pre and post surveys online and use the chat line for the question and answer session. The moderator of today's program is Dr. Sunita Kanumuri. She is an API delegate to AMA and a past president of API. Dr. Kanumuri is a practicing allergy and immunology specialist in Livingston, New Jersey, with multiple hospital affiliations. She made significant contributions to organized medicine, representing the interests of international medical graduates and American medical graduates as well. We welcome you, Dr. Kanumuri. It's now my privilege to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Susan R. Bailey. Dr. Bailey, a renowned allergist immunologist from Fort Worth, Texas, is the 175th president of the American Medical Association. A strong advocate and champion for physician autonomy and private practice, Dr. Bailey has held numerous leadership positions with the AMA, including serving as Speaker and Vice Speaker of the AMA House of Delegates, Chair of both the Advisory Panel on Women in Medicine and the AMA Council on Medical Education. She has also represented the AMA on the Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education, the American Board of Medical Specialties, and the Committee on Legislation and Advocacy. Dr. Bailey's dedicated service to organized medicine extends to the local and state levels. She has served as Board of Chair and President of the Tarrant County Medical Society, and is the Vice Speaker, Speaker, and President of the Texas Medical Association. Dr. Bailey has been an allergist in private practice for over 30 years. She has been awarded the title of Distinguished Fellow of the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. She was appointed to the Texas A&M System Board of Regents by then Governor George W. Bush, and has been named a distinguished alumnus of Texas A&M University and Texas A&M University College of Medicine. As the president of AMA, Dr. Bailey has been utilizing all available organizational resources to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, working closely with the United States government. It's my great pleasure to welcome the AMA president, Dr. Susan R. Bailey, as our distinguished speaker. Dr. Bailey.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murthy, for that one lovely introduction. I have some slides if you'll bring those up. And according to CME guidelines, I have no relevant financial disclosures. Thank you. COVID-19 has tested our physician community in ways that we have never experienced and hope we'll never experience again. My heart breaks for what I watch and read about the COVID crisis unfolding in India. It's a painful reminder that even while cities and states across the United States are reopening in ways not seen before the pandemic, that COVID-19 is still a very grave threat that must be dealt with. It requires our global community all working together to address COVID hotspots wherever they surface, whether it's in India or in my hometown of Fort Worth. I pray for the people of India, and I hope that the current administration can lend whatever support and resources are necessary to turn the tide in this pandemic. Now, while all of us have experienced hardships in this pandemic, we have been reminded about the importance of physicians being our own advocates. That's true whether we're fighting for the PPE that we need to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe, or working to eliminate barriers to care for families and communities. Whether we're working to remove some of the administrative hassles and headaches that steal time from our day and make the delivery of care more onerous, or whether we're pushing Congress for financial support and other resources to help us and our practices recover from the once-in-a-lifetime health emergency like this one. Through organized medicine, we have the power of our collective voice to bring much-needed change to medicine, both to improve the clinical environment we work in, but also to improve the experience for the patients that we serve. So thank you for this invitation to join you today. I'd like to start today, as I do in just about all my presentations, by giving a sincere thank you to physicians, nurses, and other healthcare personnel across the country who have risen to the immense challenge of this pandemic. This was in Times Square last spring that we posted on the NASDAQ sign, our thanks to physicians around the world. Your work has been extraordinary, and it's come at great personal risk to you and your families. Many in our healthcare community have died since the beginning of this pandemic. Many more have fallen seriously ill, and nearly everyone has worked long hours under intense pressure to turn the tide against COVID-19. So on behalf of everyone at the AMA, thank you for all you have done. In a time of tremendous need, our country turned to physicians, and we delivered. Physicians have stood tall in their response to COVID-19, and the AMA has stood with them every step of the way. We have responded to this health crisis in 4 important ways. First, by providing trusted, evidence-based resources and clear guidance to physicians on the front lines. Resources which can be accessed for free on our website, ama-assn.org. We've helped by helping physicians and practices recover from the disruption and damage of the pandemic by pushing for loans and other forms of financial assistance and providing guidelines on how to safely reopen. We've helped by pushing at the highest levels of government to deliver necessary equipment, such as PPE, or to reduce obstacles to patient care. And we've helped by advocating for science-based, equitable policies on pandemic control strategies, testing, and vaccine development and distribution. Now, each of these areas could fill tonight's lecture, so I'll just cover some of the highlights in my talk here tonight. And I'll also touch on some of the other important advocacy work the AMA is pursuing outside of COVID-19. So where are we right now in this pandemic? One analogy I heard recently is that COVID vaccines have moved us from the sinking shift onto a life raft, but dry land is still a ways off. With 3 safe and effective vaccines for COVID-19 now in wide circulation, The key is getting as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. It's important to know who's receiving vaccinations and critically who's not. Vaccination rates can differ markedly from state to state, even among neighboring counties. I think this creates an opportunity for physicians to take on an active and vital role as vaccine ambassadors. Experience has shown us that our patients place great faith in a strong, positive recommendation from their physicians, and that the information and education provided by physicians and other healthcare professionals results in higher vaccination acceptance. Vaccinating a critical mass of the US population is a monumental challenge. Until that occurs, we must continue to emphasize the importance of taking public health mitigation steps that we know work, of course, wearing masks, physical distancing, and washing hands. Negative attitudes about the COVID-19 vaccine began long before the vaccines were even developed. In fact, we entered this pandemic with record high anti-vaccine sentiment. Thankfully, it appears that outlooks are shifting. A Kaiser Health News report from this past March shows that vaccine hesitancy has dropped in all groups of Americans. According to this report, 55% of Black adults said they'd already been vaccinated or were planning to be vaccinated. That was an increase of 14% since February, and we know it's even higher in May. For Hispanics, 61% said they were vaccinating or were planning to. And among white adults, 64% said that they'd already been vaccinated or were planning to. Unfortunately, though, we know there's still a sizable group of people who are adamant about not receiving the vaccine. I spent a fair amount of time this morning talking to just my patients like that. We know from studies and reports that Republicans and white evangelical Christians, for example, are especially hesitant to receive the vaccine. So we still have a lot of work to do to reach every community and to answer our patients' most urgent questions and concerns if we are to reach herd immunity for COVID. One thing I find especially hopeful is that outright hesitancy is becoming less of an issue than access to the vaccine and the ability to visit a vaccination site. The speed with which the vaccines have been developed and the politicization of the pandemic has naturally led to concern among the public about safety and efficacy. The AMA has strongly encouraged federal officials to be as transparent as possible, to explain the process and to show us the vaccine trial data. And they have done so. We are confident that the FDA and the CDC have followed a rigorous, fully transparent and evidence-based process to deliver safe and effective vaccines against this virus. And we are confident that we can recommend these vaccines to our patients. At our last meeting of our AMA House of Delegates, the photo is not the last meeting of our AMA House of Delegates. This was taken a few years ago, and it just sure seems to me like everybody is sitting awfully close together. But I'm looking forward to gather again. But our last virtual meeting in November, we addressed vaccine confidence head on. We adopted a new policy to combat information through a public education campaign. We formed a coalition of healthcare and public health organizations, including those representing communities of color, to promote the facts and encourage acceptance of COVID-19 vaccines, and to continue to monitor scientific data regarding the vaccine development process. The AMA recently joined other leading organizations and corporations in a national ad council campaign designed to educate the American public and build confidence around COVID-19 vaccines. I have had a wonderful time participating with these great folks, and the AMA is proud to be a founding partner of the Ad Council's COVID-19 vaccine education initiative called the It's Up to You campaign. The campaign's designed to appeal to people's desire to protect themselves and their loved ones from this deadly virus so that we can all return to the moments we miss. Now, since the beginning of the pandemic, the AMA has been focused on supporting physicians on the front lines by pushing Congress and the administration for PPE and other resources to keep physicians and other healthcare providers safe. We've also helped support physicians in private practice recover from the financial devastation of COVID-19. Through our sustained advocacy at the federal level, we've secured broad telehealth expansion and improved payments at the federal and state levels to increase access to care and provide patients with a safer way to receive care. AMA helped secure billions of dollars in emergency funding to help physician practices stay viable and able to provide needed care through the CARES Act and subsequent emergency supplemental legislation. We created dozens of new CPT codes for COVID-19 testing, antibody testing, and other measures related to the pandemic. We urged the federal government to improve and expand testing and allow increased FDA emergency use authorizations to speed the process and lead to more informed policy decisions. We convinced the FDA and the CDC last summer to review and revise guidelines for antibody and other COVID-19 testing based on concerns about validity, reflecting guidelines issued by the AMA to help ensure physicians and the public are aware of the limitations and potential uses of serological testing. We also have encouraged private insurers to waive prior authorization requirements. A little bit more about that in a minute. And we created a number of resources to guide physician practices on safely reopening following lockdowns in the early stages of the pandemic. I hope you've seen some of the episodes of the AMA webinar series called What Physicians Need to Know. Recent installments have featured FDA officials talking about the vaccine development process, the science behind it, vaccine administration, and boosting public confidence in the vaccine. Our latest webinar, which also happened to feature Dr. Peter Marks, who is shown here, discussed the recent changes in the new vaccines, the advent of the J&J vaccine, and just happened to occur on the day that the J&J pause was announced because of concerns about immune thrombocytopenia. So that was luck, but we were able to make some news that day. Transcripts and videos are available on our website at ama-assn.org/COVID-19-webinars, or you can simply visit our main page and search for COVID-19 webinars. We hope to host more of these in the future and hope you'll join us. Telehealth has been a lifeline for physicians and struggling practices during this pandemic, but also for patients. Telehealth is one of the few healthcare issues that has true bipartisan support in Congress. So we need to take advantage of that by pushing bills that support expanding telehealth to all that need it. There are a few bills that are now in Congress that we're encouraging everyone to contact their legislators to support. I will enter those into the chat. The AMA early on created a quick guide to telemedicine that's among a number of free sources for physicians that can be found on the AMA COVID-19 Resource Center on our website. Now, there are, of course, no silver linings when it comes to COVID-19, but it is encouraging to see a paradigm shift toward telemedicine, which has become important for so many. We've advocated forcefully for telemedicine as an option for care during the pandemic. We developed a telehealth implementation playbook, which outlines a clear and efficient path to rapid scaled implementation of audio and visual visits. One of the most significant barriers to wider adoption of telemedicine has been restrictions on where patients can be located to receive these services under Medicare rules. With our and other organizations urging, CMS has temporarily removed these restrictions, which means that Medicare patients can now receive telemedicine services from the comfort and the privacy of their own homes, no matter where those homes are located. They don't have to be in a remote rural area or in a federally qualified health center. We totally have supported this change and continue to work with Congress and policymakers at CMS to resolve any outstanding questions and make these changes permanent. We're also pressing for the continuation of temporary telehealth provisions that enable better patient care, greater alignment of telehealth coverage, payment, and coding policies across all payers, and the continued suspension of regulatory hurdles. We continue to work with private insurers to mirror new Medicare telehealth flexibilities in the commercial markets and call on employers with self-funded plans to do the same. But we need to do more. We need more from Congress. We need Medicare telehealth services to be provided to patients all over the country, in their homes or wherever they are, permanently. We need Congress and insurers to continue to pay for the CPT codes for audio-only visits. We all know that many of our Medicare patients can't access audiovisual services, including many in minority and marginalized communities. We need Medicare to extend coverage of the services that are now covered on an interim basis when provided via telehealth beyond the COVID-19 public health emergency. We need more evidence to be gathered to show how these services are used outside of a pandemic. And we need to continue the flexibilities for opioid use disorder medications and controlled substances, at least until the end of the drug overdose public health emergency. Well, I mentioned prior authorization earlier, and stepping away from COVID for a second, I want to highlight a few of the AMA's advocacy priorities for this year. Well, and frankly, for as long as it takes. The prior authorization requirements of insurance companies are a perfect example of the types of burdens that not only frustrate physicians and office staff, but can negatively affect patient care. 94% of physicians reported care delays while waiting for health insurers to authorize necessary care. This was from a recent survey that we conducted last December during the height of the pandemic. Nearly 80% of physicians say their patients have abandoned treatment due to authorization struggles with health insurers. Physicians and their staff spend an average of 2 business days a week completing PAs. And regrettably, even during the pandemic, nearly 70% of physicians report that health plans never relaxed their PA requirements or only did so for a very brief period of time. We all know this from personal experience. We experience all of these every day, but it's important to have good data to show legislators and regulators that our concerns are real. And these findings illustrate a critical need to streamline or eliminate low value prior authorization requirements, excuse me, to minimize delays or disruptions during care delivery. The AMA has taken on a leading role in advocating for prior authorization reforms and convening key industry stakeholders to develop a roadmap for improving the prior authorization progress. For a number of years, the AMA has conducted a multifaceted campaign urging health plans to right-size prior authorization programs. The House bill, which gathered bipartisan majority support with 280 co-sponsors, would require Medicare Advantage plans to implement many of the concepts addressed in the consensus statement on improving the prior authorization process that was signed by many insurers, but never really followed through with. A Senate version of the bill was introduced last December, and we continue to work at the state level to push for important prior authorization and step therapy reforms in legislatures across the US. And we've enhanced our grassroots advocacy campaign, fixpriorauth.org, that's directed at both physicians and patients to spur further activity on prior authorization reform. Defending physicians from scope of practice expansions is another major area of focus, especially during the pandemic, as nurse practitioners, physicians assistants, pharmacists, and optometrists, as among others, have sought a larger role in patient care. Since 2019, the AMA has helped the states secure more than 70 legislative victories, stopping inappropriate scope expansions of non-physicians, including bills that would have expanded the scope of practice of nurse practitioners in more than 14 states. To support our work in 2021, the AMA has doubled our contribution to the Scope of Practice Partnership, which now includes over 100 national, state, and specialty medical organizations. This investment has already made a huge difference in our ability to help states with on-the-ground resources needed to defeat these bills. We've already worked with more than 20 state legislatures on scope legislation this year. Granted, we haven't won them all, but you never win the battles that you don't participate in. With a new Congress and a new administration that's friendly to the Affordable Care Act, we believe the time is right to stabilize the ACA and build on its successes. The AMA believes all Americans should have meaningful, affordable health care to improve the health of our nation. And we remain committed to protecting coverage to the more than 20 million Americans who acquired it through the ACA and expanding coverage for those who don't currently have it. And we're committing to improving the current system by expanding eligibility for premium tax credits and increasing tax credit amounts for young adults, by stabilizing and strengthening the individual market, such as establishing a permanent reinsurance program, by improving the individual market risk pool, such as providing adequate funding for and expansion of outreach efforts to increase public awareness of coverage options and the financial assistance available. Now, at the state level, Medicaid expansion should be a priority to reduce the number of underinsured individuals. Just as Medicare continues to be improved by Congress and CMS, it's important that other healthcare programs have similar adjustments and are appropriately funded. The AMA believes all Americans should have access to meaningful and affordable healthcare, and that building on the success of the ACA is the best way to get there. Oh boy, the stress on all of us during this pandemic has taken a heavy toll on our physician community and has, of course, exacerbated the ongoing crisis of physician burnout. The AMA labeled physician burnout a public health crisis 4 years ago because of increasing numbers of physicians who reported experiencing burnout symptoms and because of its profound impact on patient care. Many approaches to burnout focus on the individual, but there is growing awareness that burnout is not an individual weakness. It is a health system problem and can be best addressed with systemic changes that reduce excessive administrative burdens and eliminate barriers to high quality care. The AMA's comprehensive approach to reducing professional burnout is to deliver tools and support for physicians in the short term and to advocate for systemic changes to our health system in the long term. A 2020 study from JAMA on resilience and burnout showed that physicians actually have higher resilience than the general employed US population. That's no surprise. And that even highly resilient physicians still have substantial rates of burnout. These results suggest that although efforts to build resilience are appropriate, more emphasis should be placed on efforts addressing the characteristics of practice and external environments that contribute to burnout. Now, pre-COVID, 44% of physicians reported at least one symptom of burnout, according to the Mayslock Burnout Inventory. This is from an AMA survey done in 2019 on physician professional satisfaction that we did with burnout experts from the Mayo Clinic in Stanford. This represents a little drop from the peak in burnout seen in 2014, similar to levels we saw 8 years ago. So we hope that we are definitely on a downward trend, but we're concerned that it's peaked higher because of the epidemic. More work is needed to achieve meaningful change in the profession. Burnout can lead to devastating consequences for patients and physicians, including increased risk of medical errors, decreased quality of care, and reduced physician cognitive function and capacity. Burnout is also very expensive. It exacts a high cost on medical practices in the health system. According to a similar survey that was published in Mayo Clinic Proceedings, 1 in 5 physicians is ready to reduce clinical work hours in the next year, and 1 in 50 physicians is planning to leave medicine for a different career, not to retire, but to go do something else in the next 2 years. As I mentioned earlier, thankfully, there's a growing awareness that burnout is a health system problem. The AMA is fighting burnout by attacking health system dysfunction on many levels. We're leading the national conversation on burnout. We have convened executives from some of the nation's largest healthcare systems, and I've participated in podcasts with a couple of those CEOs in my term as president. AMA advocacy focuses on issues that continue to contribute to burnout, such as burdensome government regulations and insurer practices. Our strategic initiatives provide solutions at the individual, at the practice, and at the system level. Our award-winning tools, such as the Steps Forward Practice Improvement Strategy modules, address workflow and process issues designed to make practices run more smoothly and reduce day-to-day headaches. In 2019, the AMA launched the Practice Transformation Initiative, an ambitious new course of action to advance evidence-based solutions that address burnout in medicine. We worked with multiple different medical societies and medical practices, and we are working with them to participate with the goal of establishing venues for field testing and studying results. We want evidence-based research and then to accelerate the spread of innovations that support clinician satisfaction. To help physicians cope with the added stress and anxiety of the COVID-19 pandemic, the AMA has created a number of tools and resources to better manage their mental health. Many of these tools, in addition to our daily COVID videos and podcast series, are available for free on the AMA's COVID-19 Resource Center on our website. Our mental health resources page provides specific recommendations on how physicians can manage their stress, take care of themselves, their staff, and their patients during the pandemic. AMA's Guide to Caring for the Caregiver helps health system leaders support physicians and care teams in this challenging environment. The guide provides practical examples and strategies to encourage wellness and improve physician satisfaction. It also includes valuable strategies that address workload redistribution, institutional policies, meals, childcare, attentional to emotional and well-being, and connecting with others. Our website has strategies to prioritize mental health during certain times of year, like the winter months, and related efforts to reduce physician and provider burnout and promote wellness. Additionally, we're working aggressively with federal and state governments to cut red tape and reduce regulatory burdens in other areas. Our priorities include working to eliminate, streamline, align, and simplify federal rules and regulations imposed on physicians. We have to improve the usability of EHRs, making practice data available to physicians and holding vendors accountable for their products that don't work very well. Before I close, I want to highlight the AMA's work in health equity, which has become ever more urgent during this pandemic. The AMA is committed to ensuring that all people and all communities have the opportunities, the conditions, and the resources to reach their full health potential. That's why the AMA is leading an effort to eliminate longstanding inequities within our health system caused by structural racism, to remove barriers to care, and to improve outcomes for historically marginalized populations. Two key principles of our AMA Code of Medical Ethics state and guide our work on health equity. First, we are to provide competent medical care with compassion and respect for human dignity and rights. And we're to respect the law, but to also recognize our responsibility to seek changes when it's contrary to the best interest of our patients. Without system level and structural change, health inequities will persist. Marginalized communities will be disproportionately impacted, and the health of our nation will continue to suffer. At the AMA special meeting of the House of Delegates last summer, our leadership pledged to take action on racism in healthcare and society. Specifically, we reiterated our position that we recognize that racism is an urgent threat to public health, the advancement of health equity, and a barrier to excellence in the delivery of medical care. We oppose all forms of racism and denounce police brutality and all forms of racially motivated violence, and will actively work to dismantle racist and discriminatory policies and practices across all of healthcare. Our Center for Health Equity, which was created in 2019, is a driving force behind this work. It's working actively to embed health equity in practice, process, action, advocacy, innovation, and outcomes, to build alliances and share power via meaningful engagement, to ensure equitable opportunities and conditions and innovation for marginalized people and communities, to push upstream, including into medical education, to adequately address all determinants of health and create pathways for truth, reconciliation, and healing. The AMA just released its expansive strategic plan to advance health equity and is laying the groundwork for many of these important initiatives. So thank you again for the opportunity to join you on this historic day to celebrate the launch of your new academic journal. As I said at the top, physicians have been true heroes in the pandemic. They need the power of organized medicine working on their side now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, for your succinct and informative presentation. Your presentation reflects your extraordinary leadership and commitment to the welfare of the U.S. physician community, especially during these difficult times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks again. We now have a question and answer session. Dr. Convoy.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. Thank you, Dr. Bailey. That was an excellent presentation and a very concise work of what AMA is doing and for educating our membership on that. We do have a couple of questions, I think, from the audience. I'll go with that first, and then we'll see what comes by. One of the questions they have is, as you know, we talked about COVID and all the resources that you put together, our AMA has put together. So their concern is now with the India variant, the B.1.167, and there's a big possibility that's already here in the US and probably reached many parts of the world. And some of our vaccines are probably not as, are still not working against this new variant. So do you have an opinion on that?
Thank you. The emergence of new variants is obviously very concerning, and not only the B.1.1.7 variant, but others from Brazil, South Africa, and the more COVID cases that occur, the more chances there are for new, even more dangerous variants to emerge. And so the AMA thinks it's incredibly important that we step up our genomic surveillance to determine new variants that are occurring, in the United States. How many of the variants are already here, and to continue to study how our current vaccines work against those variants. Right now, our vaccine coverage for the variants in the United States is good. However, we know that Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech are already working on boosters in case variants emerge here that aren't well covered by our vaccines. And the good news is that it won't take lengthy trials to release those new boosters, if and when they become available. So I am hopeful that if we can get people vaccinated, today's announcement to vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds, I think is a big milestone in reaching into more populations so that we can cover more people.
Thank you. AMA and RP are the two largest medical bodies in this country. So question is, should we all come together with evidence-based data and create white paper dispelling the myths of misinformation that's currently existing? And is there any initiative from AMA on this side?
We have been talking from the very beginning about misinformation and disinformation through our website and through working with the Ad Council campaign and with the Department of Health and Human Services and the Biden White House. There are a number of campaigns going on that we are, and other medical organizations are participating in. So, I will take back the suggestion about the creation of a white paper, but I believe that there's a lot of information there about it. And it's our role as vaccine ambassadors for each of our patients to answer their questions empathetically and make sure that and many of their questions are very reasonable ones, and we can answer those. And hopefully, if we get more vaccines in physicians' offices, we can vaccinate them right away before they change their minds.
Thank you. That you well said. Is it possible to have physician licenses in one state to practice with one telehealth license rather than going and getting telehealth license from each state in the future?
Yes, and that is happening now. There are limited telehealth licenses. I don't have the details on that, but I'm sure that we've got it on our website, and I'll be happy to share that information with you at a later date to get the exact specifics on that.
Thank you. As we all know that, and we've been talking for years on the physician shortage, and it's a looming crisis, and AAMC and AMA have supported the Residence Physician Shortage Reduction Act of 2017. So do you want to give your opinion where we stand today as the shortage still looms coming 2030? Especially, IMGs and the international medical graduates make about 50% of a physician population that treat our communities. And also with the new immigration policy that endangers the care for both patient and physician. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the AMA is a strong supporter of IMGs. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with our IMG section, which is a very valuable resource to the AMA. We support lifting Medicare caps on residency numbers because we all know that that's where the bottleneck is to increasing the physician workforce. My state of Texas, our state of Texas, and some other states around have established a goal to have 110% residency spots as compared to medical student spots. In other words, to always have more residency spots than medical students that graduate, knowing that there will be an influx and an egress, but we still don't have enough. We need to improve the match system. We need to improve ways that physicians can demonstrate and prove their credentials if they didn't go to medical school in the United States. And we're happy to work with the Federation on State Medical Boards and ECFNG, anybody else that's interested in working on this process. We're very pleased about the progress that's been made in helping our DACA students. And but there's so much more to be done with J-1 visa waivers and other things that enable our valued IMG community to stay here and help American citizens.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. Can AMA help API physicians to have a global liability blanket coverage so we can help India right now with the telehealth services?
You know, I will be honest, I don't know. I am not aware of any type of global liability issue. I will take that one back to the AMA. You know, I know that there are certain types of you know, telehealth services that, you know, cross borders, but in terms of special provisions during the pandemic, I'm not sure about. So I will check on that and get back with you.
Thank you. With AI and Amazon coming up with physician platforms, are there any plans by AMA to develop platforms directly with AMA doctors and even provide international care along with national ones?
In terms of platforms, can you explain that a little better? I'm not sure what you're asking.
I think the question was, I think there are telehealth platforms that is coming up by Amazon and other companies. And
okay.
so are there any plans by AMA?
No, we are not planning on getting in the telehealth business and developing platforms. Our efforts have been making sure that telehealth gets paid for, that patients are able to access telehealth, that private insurers cover telehealth. So our efforts have been much more in the advocacy area, and we're not planning on develop any kind of platform ourselves.
Thank you. Does AMA have, what is the role of AMA in the present administration with the COVID task force?
The AMA has an office in Washington, D.C. that has dozens of people working with all branches of government. We have lobbyists that work with the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and we are in contact with members of the COVID vaccine task force on a regular basis. I communicate with Dr. Bishara Shukar, who heads up the vaccine efforts for the White House, and on a regular basis. And we participate in calls. The Biden administration has been very welcoming and there are Zoom calls between stakeholders and either Dr. Shukar or Secretary Becerra or others from the CDC almost weekly. And our Washington staffers, you know, talk to their staffers on a regular basis as well. So the communication has been very close. And we've had a great deal of input. My latest push has been getting vaccines in physicians' offices, and I'm pleased to say that we're making some progress there.
Yeah, that's excellent that AMA is on the right path. So AMA has the Equity Plan 2021-23 and to advance racial and social justice, and declaring racism as a public health threat is a step in the right direction. So towards advancing equity in medicine and public health. But since AMA is dedicated in dismantling racism and discriminatory policies, how API, which is one of the only ethnic organization that's a member of AMA, help or work with AMA to make this much more possible?
Well, I think the first step is to read our strategic plan, which just came out this week, and and see, because much of what our plan is to make sure that we embed equity in everything that we do at the AMA. But there's also going to be significant outreach. There are webinar series prioritizing equity in healthcare on a regular basis. And I know there will be some coming up which discuss our new strategic plan, and we welcome everyone's participation in this. And I'm sure there will be presentations at AMA meetings to come. So we'd be happy to work with other organizations in any way that we can.
Thank you. We definitely look forward to working on that aspect. Electronic versions, I'm sorry, okay. So what is AMA going to do to allow new MASH residents from India to arrive here on time for start of the residency?
Oh boy, I'm not sure the AMA has much control over that between immigration policies and the TSA and the pandemic. That's really a very, very challenging issue. I'll have to get back with you about specific efforts, but unfortunately, there's travel is very limited right now, and between the United States and India, as well as a number of other countries. So we know that it's a significant problem, and I'll have to get back with you on specific things that we're doing to help, because we know it's a problem.
Is there going to be any action from AMA on visa protection and green card expedition bill like Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act?
The AMA supports that, and the AMA has always supported visa waivers and improving IMG's ability to get their green card and to practice where they want to practice. There are some very arcane regulations on the numbers that are allowed. And with the physician shortage that we have, we need to get rid of some of these arcane rules and help these very valuable physicians practice in our communities.
That's so true. I don't know if we have time for more questions, but do we?
Well, we got time for a couple of more questions. Thank you.
Sure. How open is AMA to welcome API members to be more in the legislative arena?
Very, very open. The AMA encourages everyone to, a great way to start participating in the AMA is to come to meetings of the International Medical Graduates section. And they'll be meeting virtually in June. Of course, we encourage you to join the AMA as well. But in terms of the legislative arenas in the states and in Congress, AMA in general wants more physicians to participate in the legislative process, and API members are certainly no exception. AMPAC, our political action committee, sponsors campaign schools every year that teach you how to run for office and help you understand the logistics and the challenges of raising money and research and things like that. And of course, API members are welcome and encouraged to participate in these efforts.
Can we participate in efforts to reduce the EHR burden on physicians? And I think on the same token, I mean, a lot of our physicians are solo physicians. And of course, quite a few of them are in academics. Mm-hmm. But having known that, is there a way that all of us can work, especially during the pandemic, come together to come up with task force?
Well, the AMA has been working on this and been working with the Congress in Washington, and there are already established task forces and governmental offices that are working on all of this. Of course, great ideas are always welcome. Really, as the bigger EMR companies merge and become a greater segment of the market, I fear that we run the risk of antitrust situations in the EHR market and dealing with situations that are anti-competitive. So we welcome all ideas. Our legal staff watches this on a regular basis, and as does our Washington office.
Thank you. I think this would be a last question, right, Dr. Murthy?
Yes, please.
So we talked about physician burnout, and actually in 2015, when AMA came out with their paper, it was 54.4%, and as we saw today, it's 44%. So definitely there's a downward trend, but there is a lot of physician burnout. And this is because of all the mounting rules. We have the pressure of the practices, and many of us are in the survival mode, especially solo physicians. I'm a solo physician, and I see that the day to day. With the pandemic, the burnout has, of course, increased. And now the ACMGE also found a similar trend of burnout among residents. At least they say that 3.1% of residents reported feeling down 12 to 14 days and are struggling to evaluate their well-being. So is there a timeline, or of course, I know you're working at the legislative level and increasing your efforts, but is there going to be a timeline for a change, and will there be any mandatory policies made?
Well, I don't know about mandatory policies, but that's one of the goals of the Practice Transformation Initiative that I mentioned, is to look at different practice settings, and really set up a study to see what practice interventions work, what practice interventions don't work, what practice interventions may make burnout worse. And then to get that published in a peer-reviewed journal, so that we can then spread best practices on, whatever it is, whether it's staffing, whether it's EMRs, whether it's, burn reduction. I imagine it's going to be all the above, but how to find practice models that work in different specialties, different parts of the country, different urban versus rural, and see what really works. There has been some data to show that those in independent practice actually have a lower rate of burnout, possibly because they feel like they're in more control of their practices and don't necessarily have a big boss telling them what to do. And I'm a strong supporter of independent practice. I am one. I'm not solo, but the three of us are independent. So but we need to know what really works, and then we can spread those models and help individual practices.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kanmuri. This is excellent moderation. Dr. Bailey, we can't thank you enough. There are so many questions, that we would like to ask, but because of the time constraints, we can't. One of the major concerns that we have these days is the physician depression, which is only what we see today is only the tip of the iceberg. It is going to explode one day. And there will be, so many drastic things coming down, negative things coming down the line. And especially the physicians, they can't express themselves. They manage the patients, but they cannot treat themselves simply because of so many taboos, so many, inhibitions, and also the licensing, so many restrictions that might be imposed on a person when he says, well, I have got depression, I'm taking some antidepressant, and then he will go through the whole hassle of the peer review process and all that. Now, the thing is, one of the things I think, we really need to look into is to preemptive strike, and medical students as well as the residents should be able to understand and guide themselves with some courses or even during the training period, So what do you think about it?
Well, I think starting from day one of medical school is a great idea. And I think that, medical students, residents, physicians, all along, we are self-selected to be independent and strong and not admit weaknesses. And we need to have outlets where we can express our thoughts, where we can decompress or just grieve when a patient dies. And, so many things that, whether it would be, therapy groups or just confidential counseling resources to be available for students, residents, physicians, and encourage them to use it as opposed to just saying it's there, but the stigma still being attached. But just the general stigma in our population about mental health and its treatment has got to be overcome, and it's nowhere stronger than in the medical field, unfortunately.
Well said. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Kanmuri, for the excellent moderation. At this point, I request Dr. John Lagadda to honor our distinguished speaker, Dr. Bailey. Dr. John Lagadda, are you there? Dr. John Lagadda? Sorry, I think we lost him. Again, computer problem. So, moving ahead, this is such a wonderful occasion for us, and we are going to recognize and honor our eminent physician and speaker. So, the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin recognizes Susan R. Bailey, MD, for her outstanding contributions to U.S. organized medicine, and welcomes her as a member of API Distinguished Speakers Club. Signed, Sudhakar John Lagadda, MD, API President 2020-21, Vemuri S. Murthy, MD, Chairman, API Webinar CME Committee. Before we conclude this program, I think it is important for us to recognize some of the members who have contributed a lot. So you can study this as a vote of thanks. On behalf of the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin and other medical societies present here, the JAPI committee extends deep appreciation and thanks to the American Medical Association President, Dr. Susan R. Bailey, for being the chief guest and distinguished speaker. We also recognize and thank Dr. Peter C. Agre, Nobel Laureate in Chemistry, 2003, Dr. Mario R. Kepecki, Nobel Laureate in Medicine or Physiology, 2007, Dr. Mitchell S.V. Elkine, President, American Heart Association, and Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, Director, Asian Institute of Gastroenterology, for their immense support and help. On behalf of the advisory and editorial boards of JAPI, I congratulate the editor-in-chief, Dr. Kishore Bellamkonda, whose vision and energetic leadership resulted in the API's academic emblem called JAPI. We also thank the Chicago Medical Society President, Dr. Tariq Butt, for his support to the API CME programs throughout the year. And we also thank all the members and guests of API, Chicago Medical Society, and Indian colleagues for their participation and strong support. This program will conclude only after the final words from our president, Dr. Sudhakar John Lagadda. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, for an eloquent speech. And thank you, Dr. Kanmuri, and all the JAPI editorial board and committees, and bringing this outstanding, my dream project, actually, I can say, my dream project, and made it possible after 38 years. And Dr. Bailey, a humble request, you will be invited for our 39th annual convention in Atlanta in July 2nd and 3rd. We'll send you an official invitation. Our physicians want you join our women's forum that's going to be on Saturday, and we'll send you official invitation again. Thank you very much for joining today. Thank you all. Thank you. God bless. Stay safe.
Good night.